They say nothing prepares you for betrayal from someone you love, but what if that betrayal comes from your own grandchild? What if the very person you once rocked to sleep, who ran into your arms with scraped knees and dreams of being a hero, suddenly becomes a stranger with secrets darker than you ever imagined? I thought I knew him. I wanted to believe I did. But one quiet afternoon, an overheard phone call shattered that illusion, and what followed was a midnight confrontation I never thought I'd be capable of. If you've ever trusted someone blindly, only to discover they were hiding more than just mistakes, this story is for you. It started like any other lazy Sunday afternoon sunlight bleeding through the blinds, the muffled hum of traffic outside, and me nestled into my worn recliner with a half-read book I'd been meaning to finish for weeks. Peace. Or at least what passes for it at my age. My biggest concern at the time was whether I'd remember to defrost the chicken for dinner. Little did I know that in less than 10 minutes, the image I had carefully held of my grandchild, the pride of my later years, would collapse in front of me like a castle built of sand. It wasn't anything dramatic at first, just a faint murmur coming from the hallway. My grandchild had come to stay the weekend, and I'd encouraged them to take their calls in the guest room for privacy. But as I passed the half-open door on my way to the kitchen, I heard a hushed, panicked whisper. Something in the tone made me pause. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, God knows that wasn't my intention, but when your bones grow slow and your instincts grow sharp, sometimes you stop without thinking. And what I heard made my blood turn cold. I swear, I'll get the money back. Just give me a few more days. I'll vanish if I have to. Yeah, 2,000. No, they don't know anything. They think it was for school stuff. 2,000? Vanish? School? I froze behind the door frame, heart thudding in my ears. I held my breath, afraid any sound might give me away. The voice on the phonate was his, my grandson, my own flesh and blood. The boy I had once cradled in my arms, who used to run to me with scraped knees and wide-eyed stories about dragons and schoolyard heroes. That same boy was now whispering lies into a phone about running away from a debt he had no intention of paying. And worst of all, he was dragging Mei Zin to the illusion. I stood there longer than I should have, hand trembling against the wall. The call ended. The silence that followed was deafening. I backed away slowly, unsure whether to march in and demand an explanation or sit with the truth that had just been thrown like a grenade into my living room. I chose the latter. I walked into the kitchen in a daze, poured myself a glass of water, and stared at the faucet as if the answer to every question I had was written in the shine of the chrome. Who was he talking to? What was this about? I had helped him pay tuition just last semester. He said he was saving up for a course. He said he needed a new laptop for remote classes. Was it all a lie? And then a different question sank in. Heavier, darker, what kind of trouble had he gotten into that he would lie to my face? For the next few hours, I played detective. Not out loud, not yet, but in the way only a worried grandparent can. I started remembering little things gaps in his story. Vague replies, the avoidance when I asked to see his student portal, the way he seemed to flinch every time the doorbell rang or his phone buzzed unexpectedly. I had chalked it up to stress. School was hard. The world was hard. But now, I wasn't so sure. Later that evening, after he went out to meet a friend, I slipped into the guest room. I hated myself for doing it, but I checked the drawer where he kept his laptop bag. It was empty. Not just the Bagay had taken his phone charger, the flash drive, and even the documents I knew he kept there. It was like he was preparing to disappear. My heart sank lower. Then I noticed something under the edge of the pillow, a crumpled slip of paper, nearly torn in two. It was a printout of a message thread, not an email, a chat log. The words burned into my eyes. Loan Shark, you said you'd have the $2,000 by now. Where the hell is it? Jake, I'm working on it. Just need a few more days. I had to lie to my grandparent again. They think it's for school. Loan Shark, you think I'm running a charity here? You think I care about your grandma's stories? Jake, chill. I'm serious. They trust me. I've already got access to their savings drawer. One more favor, and I'm out. For good this time. Loan Shark, if I don't see that money by Friday, you better disappear for real, because I won't be the only one looking for you. Jake, I got it. Just give me till Friday night. After that, you won't hear from me again." The paper fell from my hands. My knees buckled slightly. I leaned on the bed frame to keep myself upright. Their account? One last favor? What did that mean? My savings? The emergency fund I kept in the side drawer? I staggered into my room and yanked open the drawer where I kept the old brown envelope, half for sentimental reasons, half for the fear of online banking. My hands fumbled with the seal. It was empty. $2,000. Gone. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the wall for what felt like an hour. It wasn't the money, though God knows that was a painful blow. It was the betrayal. I had trusted him. I had defended him when others questioned his choices. I had cooked for him, bought groceries for his fridge, driven across the city just to drop off home-cooked meals when he was too tired to eat. And now he had looked me in the eyes and lied. Again and again, something inside me hardened. Not with hate, but with resolve. I had been kind. I had been patient. I had opened my home, my wallet, and my heart. And all I had received in return was deception. But this wasn't going to end like that. I would confront him not with blind fury, but with the calm, unshakable force of someone who has been wronged and refuses to stay silent. If he thought he could disappear without facing me first, he was wrong. He would see that I may be old, but I am not weak. And I wasn't going to let this slide. The game had just begun. The front door creaked open just after 10 p.m. Later than usual, later than acceptable. He slipped in quietly, like a shadow trying not to disturb the dark. I was already sitting in the living room, the light above casting a harsh yellow hue across the room, illuminating everything except the truth he had tried to keep hidden. The silence was thick. He didn't notice me at first, not until he turned to hang his jacket and caught my eyes, watching him from the armchair. For a split second, his whole body stiffened. His fingers froze on the fabric of his coat. Then, just as quickly, he plastered on that crooked half-smile he'd perfected since he was 12 to 1. He used when he knew he'd done something wrong but hoped charm would erase it. "Didn't think you'd still be up?" he said casually. Voice light, too light. I didn't answer. I just held up the crumpled paper the chat log I'd found and let it speak for me. His smile died. "What's that?" he asked, playing dumb. But his eyes darted across the room like a cornered animal, searching for an exit that didn't exist. "You tell me," I said, voice steady as stone. He stepped closer, squinting, pretending he couldn't make it out. But I saw it then, the way his Adam's apple jumped when he swallowed, the tremor in his hands as he took the paper. He scanned it quickly, then slower, and then dropped it like it burned. "You went through my stuff?" he said, raising his voice now, defensive, deflecting. "Seriously, Grandpa? That's a violation." I laughed, but it was hollow and bitter. "A violation? You stole from me, lied to me, and you want to talk about violations?" His mouth opened and closed like he was reaching for the right excuse but couldn't find one that would hold water. "I was gonna tell you," he muttered. "I was just waiting for the right time." I stood up, not fast, not aggressive, but with the weight of every year I had lived and every boundary he had crossed. "You were going to disappear," I said, my voice low and trembling not from fear, but from fury barely restrained. "Don't insult me with 'I was gonna tell you.' You were going to vanish with my money and never look back." He looked away, jaw tightening. "It's just $2,000. You have savings. You act like I took your house." "It's not about the money," I said, and my voice cracked. Not from weakness, but from pain. "It's about you thinking you could treat me like a fool. You used me, and you didn't even blink while doing it." His eyes flicked back to mine, and for the first time, there was something like shame in them. But then came the wall. The same wall I'd seen creeping up over the past few months, brick by brick. He folded his arms, shifted his weight, and his voice dropped to something colder. "You don't get it," he said. "You never get it. Life's different now. Things are expensive. People do what they have to do. I just needed to make a move, get out of this mess. And you were an easy solution." An easy solution. The word stabbed deeper than he knew. I stepped closer, the space between us tightening like a noose. "So, I'm just a walking ATM to you now? Not the man who helped raise you?" Not the person who sacrificed his own retirement to pay your tuition? He looked away again, this time unable to meet my stare. I said, I'm sorry. No, I said. You haven't said anything yet that even sounds like an apology. The air between us grew heavy, and then he tried to flip the script. You know what? He snapped. You think you're perfect, but maybe if you listened to me more instead of always preaching, I wouldn't have had to go behind your back. I blinked, not because I was stunned by his words, but by how familiar this tactic was. It was the oldest defense in the book: blame the person you hurt so you don't have to look at yourself. You want to talk about listening? I said slowly. You came to me asking for help. I gave it. Again and again. I never judged you. I defended you when others questioned your choices. And you repay me by lying, stealing, and now blaming me? He clenched his fist. I'm not a thief. Then what do you call it? I asked. What do you call taking money from someone who trusted you without asking, with no intention of paying it back? I didn't know what else to do, he yelled. You think it's easy? Everything's falling apart. I owe people. I got in too deep. And you were the only one who'd still pick up the phone. And there it was. The truth, naked and raw. He was drowning. And instead of asking for a lifeline, he tried to pull me under with him. I sat back down, not because I was tired, but because my heart needed the weight off my legs. My voice softened, but it didn't lose its steel. If you had just told me the truth, I might have helped you. But you didn't. You chose to lie. And that choice has consequences. He stood there, breathing hard, the realization sinking in that the game had changed, that I wasn't going to sweep this under the rug like I had with his other mistakes, that this time the cost wasn't just dollars, it was something harder to earn back. Trust. What do you want me to do? He said at last, voice cracking. I want you to grow up, I said. I want you to take responsibility. I want you to stop acting like the world owes you something and start realizing that trust, once broken, doesn't come back easy. We sat in silence after that. The kind of silence that comes after a storm, when the wreckage is clear and the rebuilding hasn't yet begun. I didn't scream. I didn't throw him out. But I did something far worse. I made him sit there, in that silence, with himself, let the weight of his choices press down until he either stood up, a man, or walked out the same boy who thought running was the answer. And I prayed, silently, that he would choose the first. The next morning came too quietly. He was already gone before the first light filtered through the kitchen window. No note, no apology, just silence, like the night before had never happened, but it had. And it hung in the air, heavier than any storm cloud, soaking everything with doubt. I made coffee with hands that trembled, not from age, but from the echoes of disappointment that still hadn't settled. I stared at the steam rising from the cup, and the silence mocked me. Still, something in me refused to let this go. I had spent my whole life teaching people how to face consequences. My children, my students, back in the day. Even him when he was younger, when his eyes were still innocent, when he still saw the world as full of possibility, I had taught him better, which meant something or someone had taught him worse. And so I dug. I began with the obvious: his name, his digital trail. I knew enough to find public records, social posts, and forums. What I didn't expect was how deep the rot went. First, I found a string of usernames linked to the email I'd once helped him create. Then came a revelation I never expected to see. Listings on crypto forums, debt exchange groups, and underground marketplaces. His posts weren't about job hunting or studying. They were about flipping money, fast. Promises of doubling investments overnight, screenshots of payments, but none of it felt real because it wasn't. I found one thread where he bragged about pulling twuck from the old man. The old man. That was me, reduced to a handle in a forum of strangers. A mark, a target. My stomach turned, not just from the words, but from what they represented. This wasn't a one-time mistake. This was a pattern, a system of manipulation. I kept scrolling. The deeper I went, the worse it got. I found text conversations he hadn't deleted from the old iPad he used to borrow. I hadn't touched it in months. It still had access to his cloud backups. What I read made my blood run cold. He's loaded, retired, soft-hearted. He'll buy anything I say. Last time I told him my laptop got stolen, he sent 800. Didn't even ask for proof. This one's easy. Pull on the heartstrings. He eats that I want to go back to school stuff up. Each line felt like a blade, slow and deliberate. This wasn't desperation. This wasn't a young man caught in a single bad decision. This was practiced, calculated. I stared at the screen, my fingers curled into fists. This wasn't just about the money anymore. This was about the betrayal of every act of kindness I had given him. Every ride, every warm meal, every time I told people, he's just going through a rough patch, he'll come around. How many times had he looked me in the eye and lied? How many times had I defended him while he was laughing behind my back? And the worst part, the absolute worst part, was realizing I didn't know who he was anymore. I walked back to my room, set the iPad down like it was infected, and sat on the edge of my bed in stunned silence. The quiet didn't bring peace. It brought clarity. This boy, no, this man had built a whole second life on a foundation of deceit, and I was just one of many bricks. But something deeper gnawed at me. There were names in those message aliases, numbers, bits of information I didn't recognize, people he owed, people he had borrowed from, people who, from the tone of the threats, weren't as forgiving as I was. One message stood out, burned itself into my memory. You screw me again, and I won't come for the money. I'll come for blood. And suddenly I understood the fear in his voice on that phone call, the desperate edge, the way he flinched at every knock on the door. He wasn't just trying to escape from me. He was running from people who didn't believe in second chances. My breath quickened. What had he gotten into? For a moment, compassion tried to crawl back into my chest. Maybe he'd spiraled. Maybe this wasn't entirely his fault. But then I remembered those messages. The ones where he bragged about manipulating me. The ones where he called me naive and easy. No, he had chosen this path. Now he would have to walk through the fire it created. But I couldn't just sit and wait for the explosion. If something was coming, I had to prepare. That night, I installed security cameras around the house, cheap ones. But good enough. I changed the locks. I contacted my bank, froze all access to my secondary account, the one he had once helped me set up for emergencies. I checked my credit reports for any suspicious activity. And yes, there had been attempts. Applications for credit cards, small loans, all denied, thank God. But still it was clear. He had been digging deeper into me than I ever imagined. I didn't sleep that night. Every creak of the house made me jump. Every shadow outside the window set my heart racing. Not because I feared for my safety, but because I feared what this boy, this stranger, had become. A thief? A scammer? Worse? The next day, I got a call from a blocked number. I almost didn't answer, but something in me said, pick it up. The voice was unfamiliar. Male, rough. You're my name? He asked. You related to grandson's name? Yes, I said, slowly. He owes me. Big. He's been using your info. Your name. You might want to keep an eye on your house. People are looking. He hung up. My hand trembled as I set the phone down. The air in the room thickened. This had gone too far. It was no longer just about money. It was about safety, about reputation, about who I had let into my life and allowed to operate under my roof. I couldn't sit by any longer. The lies weren't just unraveling, they were spilling into my life like poison. And unless I acted, I would drown in the damage he left behind. The next step was clear. I had to find him. I had to confront him again, but this time as a grandfather begging for honesty. This time, I would face him as the man he had wronged and show him that even in my old age, I could fight back. Because if he thought the storm was over, he hadn't seen the midnight reckoning that was coming next. It happened 3 nights later. I hadn't heard from him since the confrontation. No call, no message, not even a weak excuse over text. Nothing. Just a vacuum of silence dangerous, pregnant with the kind of unknowns that twist your gut into knots. I spent my days watching the cameras I had installed, reviewing every face that passed by my gate. I changed passwords, locked away documents, and kept my cell phone charged like it was a lifeline. The world outside moved on, but inside my home, time froze. I didn't know if he was hiding or plotting. I didn't know if he'd come crawling back or if someone far worse would show up first. But I knew one thing with certainty. The next time I saw my grandson, I wouldn't beg for answers. I'd take them. The moment came not with a bang, but a whisper. 11:48 p.m. I was sitting at the kitchen table, a mug of cold tea untouched beside me, the light overhead flickering faintly like it sensed something approaching. I heard the subtle squeal of the gate, a footstep, too. The security alert blinked green, then a soft knock, just 3 short taps on the front door. Not frantic, not apologetic, calculated. I rose slowly. My cane wasn't beside me. I hadn't needed it that evening. Adrenaline had been enough. I stepped through the hallway like I was approaching the edge of a battlefield. And when I opened the door, he was standing there. Not the boy I raised. Not even the man I argued with just days before. He looked drained, hollowed out. His hoodie was soaked through with sweat, even though the night was cold. His left eye was shadowed by a faint bruise. His hands trembled not from shame, but from something deeper. Fear, withdrawal, guilt, or maybe all 3. "Can I come in?" he asked. I studied him a full 5 seconds before I stepped aside. He walked in like someone expecting to be struck from behind. His eyes darted over the familiar furniture, pausing at every drawer, every bag on the counter. He wasn't here to apologize. He was scanning, calculating, like he was still playing the same game. "I need your help," he said finally, voice hoarse. I didn't sit. I leaned against the archway, arms crossed. "Help with what?" I asked. "Another lie? Another story? Another clever little trap for the old man?" His face twitched. "I messed up. That's the understatement of the year." He sat down heavily at the kitchen table, the same one he used to draw pictures on when he was 5. He looked so out of place now, like a ghost haunting his own life. "They're after me," he whispered. "The people I borrowed from. I didn't mean for it to get this bad. I thought I could flip the money, double it, pay you back before you even noticed." "And what happened instead?" I said, voice tight. "I lost it all." I stared at him. This wasn't news. I had known for days. What mattered now wasn't the money, but the cost. "They found out about you," he continued, eyes on his hands. "They know you're connected to me. They said if I didn't pay, they'd come here." I felt the weight of those words land in my chest, heavy and cold. "So now you're scared," I said. "Not because of what you did to me, but because the monsters you fed are coming to collect." He didn't reply. He didn't need to. I walked around the table, slowly, deliberately. When I stopped in front of him, I placed something on the table. An envelope. Full. His eyes widened. "That's the money?" "Yes," I said. "Plus interest." Took a bit out of what I had left. Filed some claims, called in some favors. "You got it back?" he asked, voice cracking. I did. He reached for it, but I placed my hand on top. "You're not taking this," I said. "You're going to look at it. Then you're going to understand what it cost me. Then you're going to listen." He sank back in the chair, defeated, and I began. "I loved you like a son. Maybe more than I should have. I excused things I shouldn't have. I gave more than I had, thinking you'd find your way back." His lip quivered, but I kept going. "You spat on that. You used me like an ATM. And when the lies caught up to you, you didn't come to make things right. You came because you were scared. That's not redemption. That's survival." He looked away, tears brimming now. "I don't care if you cry," I snapped. "Tears don't fix what's broken. Words don't rebuild trust. Only actions do. So here's what's going to happen." He looked at me then, really looked like he hadn't in years. "You're going to take this envelope," I continued, "and you're going to walk to that front door. Outside, there's a man waiting in a car. I hired him. He's ex-military. Been helping kids like you get out of hellholes like this for years. You'll go with him. You'll work. You'll sweat. You'll fix what you broke. He blinked. What if I don't? Then you leave here, I said quietly, and I call every number I have. I expose every lie. You'll burn every bridge left. With me, with the law, with your own name. The room fell into a hush. A long pause stretched between us, filled with unsaid things. He reached for the envelope again, slower this time, like it was made of fire. I'm sorry, he whispered. Too late for sorry, I said, but maybe not too late for change. He nodded, and just like that, he stood. He didn't hug me. He didn't ask for forgiveness, but he walked out the door, and I watched from the window as he climbed into the car and disappeared into the night. I didn't know if he'd return, but I knew this much. That was the first step he'd taken in years without lying to himself. And for the first time in weeks, I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. The storm had passed, but the damage would take a lifetime to undo. The house was too quiet after he left. It wasn't just the absence of footsteps or the faint scent of his cologne that still clung to the hallway. It was something deeper, like a space that had been stretched, used, and then abruptly vacated. A silence not of peace, but of aftermath, the kind that follows a tornado. Things may look intact at first glance, but the foundation is cracked. You just don't see it yet. I stood by the window long after the car had disappeared down the road. Even after the taillights vanished and the engine's low hum faded into the distance, I lingered, half expecting him to come running back, to knock on the door and ask for another chance, another story, another lie. But he didn't. And that somehow was more unsettling than if he had. The next morning, I woke with a stiffness I hadn't felt in years. Not in my bones, but in my chest. Like something inside had been rearranged while I slept. I shuffled into the kitchen, brewed a fresh pot of coffee, and sat at the same table where, just hours before, we'd faced each other like strangers who shared blood but no longer shared trust. His mug was still on the counter. I picked it up, washed it slowly, methodically. It felt like a ritual cleansing, not just the porcelain, but the memory that clung to it. The coffee ring it left on the counter, the lip print still faintly visible. Ghost in ceramic. That day, I did something I hadn't done in years. I opened my journal. It had gathered dust on the shelf beside the fireplace, half filled with scribbles from a time when I still believed words could help make sense of pain. I turned to a blank page, picked up a pen, and began to write not to him, not even to myself, but to the silence. When someone you love betrays you, it's not just the betrayal that hurts, it's the betrayal of the memory of who they used to be. The words came slow, like molasses, thick, heavy, but each sentence was a release. I wrote about the lies, the money, the moment I realized I had been used. But I also wrote about the boy who used to sit on my lap and ask me if heaven had toy stores. The boy who once cried when he lost a goldfish and made me promise it had gone somewhere better. The boy who used to believe I could fix anything. That boy had died somewhere along the road to adulthood. And maybe, just maybe, last night was his funeral. I wasn't naive. I didn't believe that one ride in a stranger's car would undo years of damage. Redemption isn't born in a single act. It's forged in fire, shaped through consequences, and sealed in time. But what I did believe, what I hoped, was that he had taken the first honest step in years. And sometimes, that's all you can ask for. Over the next few weeks, I received updates from the man I had hired, Rick, a friend of a friend. He ran a program in a quiet mountain town, far enough from the city to strip away temptation, close enough to reach in an emergency. He sent me photos. My grandson's shovel in hand, dirt on his face, eyes hollow but present. Working, sweating, surrounded by other boys who had once made the same mistakes, now slowly climbing out of the same abyss. He wasn't smiling, but he wasn't running either. That was enough. At first, the letters came once a week. Short, awkward, filled with half-formed thoughts. Didn't know digging holes could feel like therapy. My hands are bleeding, but the blisters feel real. I need real. I haven't lied all week, not even once. That feels bigger than it should. Then one letter arrived that made my chest tighten in a way no amount of caffeine could undo. I saw a kid here who reminded me of myself. He lied to his grandma to get out of jail time, thought it was clever. I wanted to shake him, scream at him. Instead, I told him the truth, that I was once worse, and that if he didn't stop now, he'd wake up one day and find himself alone at midnight in a kitchen that used to feel like home, staring into the eyes of the only person left who still cared and lying to him, too. I read that letter a dozen times, not because it was poetic, but because it was honest. And honesty from him was the rarest gift of all. I didn't reply right away. I didn't know how. What do you say to a boy who almost destroyed everything and is now trying to build something out of the wreckage? So I waited. And then one day, my phone rang. Unknown number. My gut told me who it was. I answered. Hey, he said, just that one word. Hey, I replied. Silence stretched. But it wasn't the tense kind. It was the silence of two people standing on either side of a chasm, finally building the first bridge. I know you probably still don't trust me, he said. I don't even trust me yet, but I'm trying. I really am. I let the words hang in the air. Then, that's all I ever wanted. He let out a breath. I'm staying here another 3 months. Then maybe, I don't know, maybe I come back. Maybe I don't. Whatever you do, I said, just make sure it's forward. There was a pause. Then, I love you. I didn't say it back. Not because I didn't feel it, but because love, like trust, had to be earned again. So I said, keep working. And he understood. I hung up and walked to the porch. The sun was rising gold, bleeding across the horizon, soft and slow. A new day. Not clean, not perfect, but real. That's what healing feels like. Not erasing the scars, but learning to live with them, to trace the lines of damage and remember the lessons they taught you, to forgive and not because they deserve it, but because you deserve peace. He hadn't made it all right. He might never. But he had stopped digging deeper into the liand, had picked up a shovel to start climbing out of it. And that, to me, was the turning point. The moment when the boy I once knew began to find his way back. Not to me, but to himself. So that's how it all unfolded, from lies and stolen money to a confrontation that could have broken us forever, and finally to the quiet hope of redemption. No, everything isn't fixed, and maybe it never will be. But sometimes the most powerful victories aren't loud or dramatic. They're quiet moments of truth, steps in the right direction, and the decision to rebuild what was nearly lost. If this story stirred something in you, if you've faced betrayal or made the hard choice to forgive, don't keep it in. Share your thoughts in the comments or tell me your story. And if you haven't already, don't forget to like and subscribe, because sometimes the most powerful lessons come from the places we least expect.